The strange thing about hearing your wife wish you would disappear is that the world doesn't stop when it happens. The refrigerator still hums. Ice still clinks in glasses. And somewhere in the background, people keep laughing like your heart didn't just crack open. I remember the exact moment because ordinary moments are the ones that ruin you for life. It was a Thursday night in early October, cold enough for the windows to fog at the corners, but not cold enough to turn the heat on yet. I'd stopped at a grocery store outside Columbus after a 12-hour shift at the distribution center. My work jacket smelled faintly like cardboard dust and diesel from the loading docks. In one hand, I carried a paper bag with Claire's favorite salted caramel cheesecake because her birthday was 3 days away. In the other, I had a bottle of red wine I couldn't really afford but bought anyway because somewhere along the line I'd convinced myself small gestures could still save a marriage. The house looked warm when I pulled into the driveway. Kitchen lights glowing soft yellow through the curtains. Music drifting faintly through the walls. For one stupid second, I actually smiled. Thought maybe she was in a better mood tonight. Thought maybe things were turning around. Then I opened the front door and heard her voice before she saw me. Honestly, Claire laughed, the kind of laugh that used to make me feel lucky 20 years ago. If Ethan vanished before my birthday, that'd probably be the best gift I could get. The room exploded with laughter. Wine glasses tapped together. Somebody actually snorted. And just like that, something inside me went completely still. I didn't walk into the kitchen. I didn't slam the door. I just stood there in the dark hallway holding a cheesecake while my wife joked about my existence like I was a problem she couldn't wait to erase. Claire's friend Melissa said, "Oh my God, stop," through drunken laughter, but not in a way that meant stop. More like keep going. Claire sighed dramatically. "I'm serious. He's always there, asking questions, trying to fix everything. It's exhausting." Another round of laughter followed that one. Softer this time, meaner somehow. My fingers tightened around the paper bag until I felt the cardboard bend. The cheesecake tilted sideways inside the box. 14 years of marriage suddenly felt as fragile as that cheap bakery string holding the package together. I stared at the family photos hanging beside the hallway mirror. Beach vacations. Christmas mornings. Claire smiling beside me with both hands wrapped around my arm like she actually wanted to be there. Funny how pictures keep lying for people long after the truth leaves the room. "He's a good guy," one of her friends said carefully. Claire let out this low, tired laugh I'd never heard before. "Yeah," she said. "That's the problem." The kitchen blurred for a second. Not from tears. Shock doesn't feel like crying. It feels like your body forgetting how to process oxygen. I looked down at the wine bottle in my hand. Cabernet. Her favorite. I'd spent 20 minutes choosing it because the cashier said it paired well with cheesecake. God, what a pathetic man I must have looked like standing there trying to buy romance for a woman already emotionally gone. I should have walked in. Should have confronted her. Asked how long she'd hated me. Asked why she stayed if my presence made her miserable. But something older and sadder settled into my chest instead. Exhaustion. The kind that doesn't come from work. The kind that comes from trying to hold together something that quietly stopped wanting you a long time ago. So I fixed my face in the hallway mirror, picked up the collapsing cheesecake box, and walked into the kitchen with a smile that even I almost believed. Claire looked up first when I stepped into the kitchen. Her smile appeared instantly, smooth and polished. The kind people wear when they already know they are being watched. "There he is," she said brightly, like I had not just heard her wish me out of existence 30 seconds earlier. The kitchen smelled like garlic bread and expensive candles. 3 of her friends sat around the marble island with wine glasses in their hands, cheeks pink from alcohol and gossip. Melissa gave me an awkward half-smile before looking down into her drink. The others suddenly found their phones very interesting. Funny how guilt changes the temperature in a room. "You are home late," Claire said as she crossed the kitchen toward me. She kissed my cheek lightly. Quick, careful, performative. I used to think love lived inside gestures like that. Now all I felt was timing. Her hand rested against my chest for half a second before slipping away. "Traffic on I-270 was terrible," I said calmly, placing the wine bottle on the counter beside the charcuterie board she only made when company came over. "I brought cheesecake." Claire's eyes widened just enough to look convincing. "Ethan, you did not have to do that." But she did not sound touched. She sounded relieved I was acting normal. That realization hurt worse than the joke. Everybody in that kitchen was waiting to see whether I had heard her. watching me the way people watch a gas leak. They hope nobody lights a match near. I lifted the bakery box slightly. Salted caramel. Your favorite. One of the women muttered, that actually sounds amazing. Claire laughed softly and opened the refrigerator. You always remember the little things, she said. There was something strange about hearing tenderness from someone who had just finished dismantling you 5 feet away. I loosened my jacket and looked around the kitchen. White cabinets. Gold hardware. The expensive light fixture Claire begged for last spring hanging above the island like something out of a home renovation show. I paid for every inch of that room, working overtime shifts while she built Pinterest boards and complained about how emotionally unavailable I had become. The cruel part was she was not entirely wrong. Somewhere between mortgage payments, double shifts, and trying to keep our marriage from collapsing every week, I had become tired in a way sleep could not fix. Melissa cleared her throat awkwardly. We were just talking about Claire's birthday plans. Claire leaned against the counter and smiled at me carefully now, measuring me. The girls think we should do the rooftop lounge downtown Saturday night. We. Not us. Not you and me. Just whatever version of her life existed when I was not in the room. Sounds nice, I said. And I meant it. That was the saddest part. Even after hearing what she said, some broken loyal part of me still wanted her birthday to be perfect. Claire studied my face for signs of damage. I kept my expression neutral. Years of marriage teach you how to survive uncomfortable dinners. You okay? She asked casually while opening the wine. Such a simple question. Such a terrifying one when the person asking already knows the answer. I nodded once. Long day. She relaxed immediately after that. Tiny. Almost invisible. But I saw it. Relief. Because the truth was Claire did not want a confrontation. She wanted comfort without accountability. Distance without consequences. A husband quiet enough to absorb disrespect like wallpaper absorbs smoke. The conversation slowly started back up around me, but something had changed. I could hear it underneath the laughter now. The carefulness. The editing. Every joke passed through a filter before being spoken. Claire touched my arm twice during the next 20 minutes, overcompensating for an audience suddenly aware of itself. And standing there with a paper plate in my hand while her friends laughed too loudly at stories nobody cared about, I realized something cold and permanent. My wife was no longer afraid of losing me. She was afraid of looking like the reason she did. After her friends finally left, the house settled into that strange midnight, quiet married people know too well. Cabinet doors closed softer. Footsteps sounded careful. Even the dishwasher humming in the kitchen felt louder than usual. Claire stood at the sink rinsing wine glasses while I sat at the dining room table pretending to scroll through emails on my phone. We looked like a normal couple winding down after guests. That was the terrifying part. Disaster rarely announces itself with screaming. Sometimes it arrives dressed as routine. Melissa stayed too late. Claire said casually without turning around. I swear she would live here if we let her. I nodded faintly. The warm water ran over Crystal while she dried each glass with slow practiced movements. Watching her there, framed by the kitchen lights in gray sweatpants and one of my old Ohio State hoodies, hurt in ways I could not explain. Because for a second, she looked like the woman I married again. Not the version sitting around mocking me over wine 30 minutes earlier. Memory is cruel like that. It keeps handing you photographs while your real life burns quietly in the background. I met Claire when we were 26 years old in a Kroger checkout line during a thunderstorm. She had 2 frozen pizzas, a bottle of cheap wine, and exactly $7 in her checking account. Her debit card declined twice. I still remember the embarrassment on her face. Bright red cheeks. Blonde hair sticking to her jacket from the rain. I paid for her groceries because she looked 2 seconds away from crying. She laughed nervously and said, "Congratulations. You just invested heavily in a stranger." For years afterward, she told that story like it was romantic fate. Back then, she loved simple things. Friday night takeout, gas station coffee during road trips, sitting on the hood of my truck at a drive-in theater outside Dayton because we could not afford real dates. We built our first apartment out of hand-me-down furniture and optimism. The couch leaned slightly left because one leg was shorter than the others. The kitchen smelled permanently like radiator heat and ramen noodles. We were broke enough to count quarters for laundry machines, but Claire used to dance barefoot while making boxed macaroni like we owned a mansion. Sometimes I wonder when exactly people leave each other emotionally. Not physically, Emotionally, there is never one dramatic moment. It is smaller than that. Slower. Like watching paint fade on a house you pass every day until one morning you realize the color disappeared years ago. Claire dried another wine glass and glanced at me. You are quiet tonight. I almost laughed at that. Quiet. As if silence was some sudden condition instead of the language our marriage had been speaking for years. Just tired, I said. She accepted the answer immediately. That hurt too, because the old Claire would have pushed. Sat beside me. Asked what was wrong until I finally answered honestly. This version only wanted reassurance that my emotions would not inconvenience her evening. She turned off the sink and leaned against the counter. You still taking Friday off for my birthday? There it was. The birthday. The thing orbiting every conversation lately like some sacred national holiday. Yeah, I answered. I already told work. Good, she said softly. I want this weekend to feel special. I looked at her then. Really looked. The careful makeup she still wore near midnight. Fresh manicure. Phone face down beside her water glass. Every tiny detail suddenly felt loaded with meaning. People think betrayal arrives looking ugly. Sometimes it arrives looking beautiful and exhausted and familiar. Sometimes it sleeps beside you for years before finally saying the quiet part out loud. Claire smiled faintly before heading upstairs. Do not stay up too late, okay? She said gently. Same voice she used for 14 years. Same voice that once made me feel safe. I listened to her footsteps disappear down the hallway while the dishwasher hummed in the dark kitchen beside me. And sitting there alone at the table we picked out together 9 years earlier, I realized something I had been avoiding for a long time. I was mourning a marriage that had not technically ended yet. The next morning started the way most collapsing marriages do in America. Coffee brewing at 6:15. Local news murmuring softly from the television. Two people standing in the same kitchen pretending distance is temporary. Claire came downstairs wearing cream-colored workout clothes and that clean, expensive perfume she only wore when she planned on seeing people. Morning, she said lightly while checking her phone before she even looked at me. I stood at the stove flipping eggs one-handed like I had done thousands of mornings before. Habit is a powerful thing, sometimes stronger than heartbreak. Morning, I answered. She poured almond milk into her coffee and leaned against the counter scrolling through Instagram. Not talking, just existing near me. Somewhere along the line, that became our marriage. Parallel lives, sharing utilities. Melissa sent me pictures from last night, Claire said suddenly. I swear I look exhausted in all of them. I glanced over my shoulder. You look fine. She smiled faintly at the screen, but not at me. You always say that. 3 years earlier, that sentence would have started a playful argument. Now it landed between us like paperwork. I slid her plate onto the counter anyway. Eggs, turkey bacon, toast cut diagonally because she once mentioned restaurants made it look prettier that way. Funny what love trains you to remember. Claire sat down at the island and took 2 bites before her phone buzzed again. She smiled instantly. Not huge, just enough. But after 14 years, I knew every version of her smile. There was one for strangers, one for family, one for clients, and there used to be one for me. The smile she gave that phone was not mine anymore. Who is that? I asked casually while rinsing the pan. Jenna, she replied quickly. Birthday stuff. Another lie wrapped in partial truth. I did not call her out. That surprised even me, because old Ethan would have pushed gently, asked questions, tried to reconnect, tried to solve, but something inside me had started powering down quietly, like lights shutting off floor by floor in an empty office building. Claire noticed it too. Around 8 that night, I was sitting in the living room answering work emails while she got ready upstairs for another dinner with friends. Usually I would ask where she was going, who would be there, what time she thought she would be home. Not because I was controlling, because I still believed married people were supposed to care about each other's lives. This time I asked nothing. Claire appeared at the bottom of the stairs in a black coat and knee-high boots, adjusting an earring while watching me carefully. You are not going to ask where I am headed? She said with a small laugh. I looked up from my laptop. Do you want me to? She blinked once. Tiny pause. No, I just figured you would. Okay. That was it. One word. Calm. Flat. The silence afterwards stretched strangely across the room. Claire grabbed her purse slower than usual. It is just dinner with the girls. Have fun. Another pause. You sure you are okay? There it was again. Not concern. Surveillance. She kept checking the emotional temperature like someone monitoring a crack in a dam. I am fine, I answered. And for the first time in years, I meant it in a different way. Not happy, not healed, just finished chasing. Claire stood near the front door another few seconds like she expected something else from me. A question, a complaint, maybe even jealousy. But I gave her nothing. She finally left with a confused little smile that disappeared before she reached the driveway. The garage door rumbled shut beneath the cold Ohio night, and the house became quiet again. I sat there listening to the refrigerator hum in the kitchen while my laptop screen glowed blue across the dark living room. People think marriages end during huge, screaming matches. Mine started ending the moment I stopped trying to convince my wife to choose me. The strange thing about emotionally checking out of your own marriage is how invisible it looks at first. Nobody sees the shift happen. There is no dramatic speech, no slammed doors, just tiny absences stacking quietly on top of each other until love starts sounding like politeness. Claire noticed the changes before she understood them. That Monday morning, I left for work without kissing her goodbye for the first time in 14 years. Not intentionally. I simply forgot. I was halfway down Interstate 71 with warehouse inventory reports playing through the truck speakers when I realized it. My hand actually tightened on the steering wheel from habit, like guilt should have followed. But it did not. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. You forgot your coffee thermos. No heart emoji. No smiley face. Just information. I stared at the message while forklifts beeped across the loading dock behind me. Usually I would answer with something light. Guess I need my wife to keep me alive. Something harmless like that. Instead I typed, I will grab it tonight. 3 dots appeared instantly on the screen. Disappeared. Came back again. Then finally. Okay. That one word carried more confusion than anger. She was beginning to feel it now. The distance. The quiet. The absence of pursuit. That evening I stopped at a sporting goods store after work and bought a pair of running shoes. Nothing expensive. Gray Nike trainers with white soles. The kind of shoes people buy when they decide to start over slowly. The cashier asked if I wanted to sign up for rewards points. I almost laughed. Imagine rebuilding your life one customer loyalty account at a time. When I got home, Claire was curled on the couch under a blanket watching one of those home renovation shows she loved. White kitchens. Open concepts. Happy couples pretending granite countertops solve emotional loneliness. Hey, she said softly when I walked in. Her eyes dropped immediately to the shopping bag in my hand. What did you buy? Running shoes. Running? She repeated with a small, surprised smile. Since when do you run? I shrugged lightly while setting my keys on the counter. Thought I would start. She muted the television. That is random. Maybe. Claire watched me carefully then, like someone trying to solve a puzzle missing one piece. You hate cardio. People change. The words slipped out before I could soften them. Not cruel. Not sharp. Just honest. Something flickered across her face after that. Tiny. Nervous maybe. The kind of expression people get when familiar ground suddenly feels unstable beneath them. Later that night, I started clearing old emails from my laptop while Claire brushed her teeth upstairs. Thousands of messages. Utility bills. Work schedules. Vacation receipts from a marriage that looked healthier online than it ever felt in real life. Then I found an old folder labeled Anniversary Trip. Aspen. 8 years ago. Claire smiling in a thick winter coat beside rented skis neither of us knew how to use. I remembered that trip clearly because it was the last time she looked at me like I was still her favorite person in the room. Before social media turned every dinner into performance. Before girls' nights became weekly therapy sessions about disappointing husbands. Before our marriage started competing with every curated fantasy online. I closed the folder and stared at my reflection faintly mirrored in the dark laptop screen. 41 years old. Tired eyes. Calloused hands. Still wearing the same wedding ring. That suddenly felt heavier every day. Upstairs, Claire laughed quietly at something on her phone. Not a big laugh. Just soft. Intimate. Familiar. The sound drifted down the hallway while the house settled around us. And sitting there alone in the glow of my computer screen, I realized something painful. Claire had spent years slowly teaching herself how to live without me. I had just finally started learning how to do the same. By Thursday, Claire had started watching me the way people watch weather reports before a storm. Quietly. Constantly. Not because I was angry. Anger would have made sense to her. Anger is loud. Predictable. What unsettled her was the calm. That morning I woke up before sunrise and went for my first run around the neighborhood. The air smelled like wet leaves and chimney smoke drifting through suburban Ohio. My knees hated every second of it. My lungs burned halfway down Maplewood Drive. But there was something strangely honest about physical exhaustion. You either kept moving or you stopped. No pretending. No emotional negotiations. When I got back home, sweat cooling under my gray hoodie, Claire was standing in the kitchen holding her coffee mug with both hands. "You actually went," she said, sounding almost impressed. "Told you I would." She smiled carefully. "You are full of surprises lately." I grabbed a bottle of water from the refrigerator. "Maybe you stopped noticing me before." The words landed softly but hard enough. Claire looked down at her mug after that. Tiny silence. Tiny crack. For years, I had spent so much energy trying to make our marriage feel lighter that I forgot relationships are supposed to carry two people, not one. That afternoon, during my lunch break, I sat in my truck outside a small apartment complex 20 minutes east of Columbus. Nothing fancy. Just clean brick buildings with narrow balconies and quiet parking lots. The leasing manager, an older woman named Denise, handed me a brochure while country music played softly through the office speakers. "You looking to move soon?" she asked politely. I stared down at the floor plan in my hands. 1 bedroom, 700 square feet, washer and dryer included. "Possibly," I answered. Funny how one word can contain an entire collapsing life. On the drive back to work, I kept thinking about Claire's birthday party Saturday night. The rooftop lounge downtown. Her friends. The expensive black dress hanging in our bedroom closet with the tags still attached. For months, she had talked about this birthday like it represented some new chapter of her life. Freedom. Reinvention. Meanwhile, I had quietly become a ghost walking through the edges of it. That evening, Claire was sitting cross-legged on the bed surrounded by makeup palettes and shoe boxes when I got home. "Can you help me choose?" she asked brightly while holding up 2 pairs of heels. "The silver or the black?" I loosened my tie slowly and looked at them. "Black? Really? I thought silver was more fun." "Black looks elegant." She stared at me a second too long after that answer. "You used to hate when I wore black." I shrugged gently. People change. There it was again. That phrase. Simple. Harmless. But every time I said it now, I could feel Claire hearing something underneath it she did not like. Later that night, while she showered upstairs, her phone buzzed against the bathroom counter. Just once. A preview notification lit up the screen from someone named Ryan. "Cannot wait for Saturday. You deserve a night without stress for once." I looked away almost immediately. Not because I was afraid of the truth anymore. Because I was tired of chasing it. Maybe Ryan was harmless. Maybe he was not. At some point, suspicion becomes emotional poison you keep drinking yourself. Claire came downstairs in oversized sleep clothes toweling her hair dry. "Who texted?" she asked casually after noticing her phone screen lit up. "No idea." She studied my face carefully. Waiting for jealousy. Waiting for questions. Waiting for old Ethan to show up and fight for scraps of reassurance. I picked up my laptop instead. "I'm going to finish some work stuff." The disappointment on her face flashed so quickly most people would have missed it. But I saw it clearly. Claire did not miss my love yet. She missed my attention. There is a difference. Around midnight, I walked through the hallway, turning off lights while the house settled into silence around us. In the guest room closet, hidden behind winter coats and old storage bins, sat a small cardboard box with copies of bank statements, apartment paperwork, and a folded lease application waiting for my signature. My exit plan fit inside one box. 14 years of marriage reduced to paperwork and quiet decisions made after midnight. And standing there in the dark hallway while Claire slept upstairs beneath soft white blankets, I realized something painful. She thought she was slowly pushing me away. She had no idea I was already learning how to leave. Claire's birthday arrived cold and bright. One of those sharp Ohio autumn mornings where the sunlight looks beautiful but carries no warmth with it. I woke up at 5:30 before the alarm, staring at the ceiling while the house sat perfectly still around me. Beside me, Claire slept curled toward the edge of the bed with one hand tucked beneath her cheek. Peaceful. Untouched. Strange how someone can sleep soundly inches away from the person they have been slowly destroying emotionally. For a long time, I just listened to her breathing. 14 years beside the same woman teaches your body certain rhythms. The soft exhale before she rolls over. The way she steals blankets without noticing. The faint smell of vanilla lotion lingering on pillowcases. Ordinary details become dangerous when you realize they are about to become memories instead of routines. Around 6:15, I slid carefully out of bed and walked downstairs into the kitchen. The hardwood floors felt cold beneath my socks. Outside, frost clung lightly to the grass in the backyard while the coffee machine sputtered awake in the dark. I stood there holding my wedding ring between my fingers for almost a full minute before finally setting it down beside the fruit bowl on the counter. Gold looked strangely small outside the hand that wore it every day for 14 years. I left the note underneath it. One folded sheet of white paper. No dramatic speech. No accusations. Just the truth stripped down to its bones. You said life would be easier if I disappeared. I finally decided to make you happy. That was all. I did not mention Ryan. I did not mention the laughter in the kitchen. I did not explain the months of loneliness sitting quietly between us at dinner tables and grocery stores and family holidays. Some endings do not need evidence. Just exhaustion. By 7:30, my truck was packed. 2 duffel bags. Work clothes. Running shoes. A box of paperwork. The framed photo of my father from the garage shelf. Funny what people choose to save when their life changes shape. I paused once in the driveway and looked back at the house. White siding. Blue shutters. The porch light Claire insisted made the place feel welcoming. We bought that house when we were 32 years old after celebrating with cheap champagne on the living room floor because we could not afford furniture yet. Back then, standing beside Claire felt like standing beside the future. Now the house looked like a museum built around someone else's marriage. Downtown Columbus was already waking up by the time I checked into the apartment. Traffic lights blinking over wet pavement. People carrying coffee cups into office buildings. Ordinary Saturday life continuing like my chest was not collapsing quietly inside me. Denise handed me my keys with a practiced smile. "Congratulations on the new place," she said kindly. I almost laughed at the word congratulations. Around noon my phone started vibrating across the apartment counter. Claire. Missed call. Then another. Then 3 more back to back. I stared at the screen while sunlight stretched slowly across the empty living room floor. No couch yet. No television. Just silence and cardboard boxes. Another text appeared. "Ethan, where are you?" Then 30 seconds later. "Are you seriously doing this today?" That one told me everything. Not fear. Not heartbreak. Inconvenience. Her birthday had become collateral damage in a story she thought she controlled. By 6 that evening, the rooftop lounge downtown was probably glowing gold with hanging lights and overpriced cocktails. Claire's friends arriving in heels and long coats. Music playing softly over rooftop heaters while the city skyline flickered beneath the darkening sky. Somewhere in the middle of all that noise, my wife was likely standing there with perfect makeup and a fractured smile, trying to explain why her husband vanished the morning of her birthday. My phone buzzed again while I sat alone on the apartment floor eating takeout Chinese food from a white carton. "Please answer me." Another message followed almost immediately. "This is not funny." Then finally, 20 minutes later, "Ethan, I am serious." I looked around the quiet apartment. Blank walls. Half-unpacked boxes. One cheap lamp glowing near the window. And for the first time in years, the silence around me did not feel lonely. It felt honest. The first week after I left felt strangely quiet, like stepping out of a factory after years of constant machinery humming in your ears. You expect silence to feel empty, but sometimes it feels like relief. My apartment slowly started looking less temporary. I bought a coffee maker from Target. Folded my clothes instead of living out of duffel bags. Hung 2 framed photos on the wall because blank spaces started reminding me too much of hotel rooms and emotional exile. Every morning before work, I ran 3 miles through a nearby park while cold October air burned my lungs awake. Every evening, I came home to stillness instead of tension. No careful conversations. No emotional temperature checks. No pretending everything was fine while resentment sat at the dinner table between us like a third person. Claire called every day at first. Sometimes angry. Sometimes crying. Sometimes controlled in that polished way people speak when they still believe they can negotiate their way back into control. "You embarrassed me," she said during one voicemail. "Do you have any idea what people were saying at the party?" Another message arrived the next morning. Softer this time. "I just do not understand how you could leave without talking to me." That one almost made me laugh. 14 years. Thousands of conversations. Endless attempts to explain loneliness to someone determined not to hear it because hearing it would require accountability. One Wednesday night, about 2 weeks after I moved out, I finally answered when she called. Her breathing caught slightly the moment she heard my voice. Ethan, just my name. Fragile now. Hey, Claire. Silence stretched across the line for a few seconds. I could hear restaurant noise in the background where she was. Glasses clinking. Low conversation. Life continuing. Where are you staying? She asked quietly. Columbus. That is all you are going to say? I looked around my apartment while rain tapped softly against the window beside me. A half-finished protein shake sat on the counter. Running shoes near the front door. Laundry tumbling quietly in the dryer. Small peaceful things. I do not really know what else you want me to say. Her voice tightened after that. You vanished. There it was again. That word. Vanished. Like I disappeared randomly instead of slowly fading in front of her for years while she watched without concern. No, I answered calmly. I left. Another silence. Longer this time. Then finally she whispered, I never thought you actually would. That sentence stayed with me after the call ended. Not because it hurt, because it explained everything. Claire never believed there would be consequences for starving a marriage emotionally. She thought I would stay loyal forever no matter how invisible I felt. Some people confuse patience with weakness because they have never seen what happens when a quiet person finally runs out of hope. A few days later, Melissa messaged me unexpectedly. I think Claire is falling apart, she wrote. She barely sleeps. She keeps replaying that night over and over. I stared at the message while sitting in my truck outside the gym. Rainwater slid slowly across the windshield beneath the parking lot lights. For a second, guilt tried creeping back in. 14 years does not disappear cleanly. Love leaves fingerprints even after it dies. But then I remembered standing in that hallway holding a cheesecake while my wife laughed about life being easier without me. Pain changes shape when you finally stop protecting the person causing it. Later that night, I found myself walking through the grocery store after work buying things Claire hated. Black coffee instead of vanilla creamer. Spicy food instead of mild. Dark. Gray towels instead of white because nobody was around to complain they looked depressing. Tiny freedoms. Tiny reclaimed pieces of self. At checkout, the cashier smiled politely and asked, paper or plastic? Such an ordinary question. But standing there beneath fluorescent lights with cold rain still clinging to my jacket, I realized something quietly life-changing. For the first time in years, every decision in my life belonged entirely to me again. And somewhere across the city, my wife was finally discovering what silence feels like when the person who carried all the emotional weight is no longer in the room. Winter arrived slowly after that. Ohio skies turned pale gray by 4:30 in the afternoon, and the trees outside my apartment shed their leaves until the branches looked skeletal against the cold. Life settled into quieter rhythms. Work, gym, long runs through frozen neighborhoods with my breath fogging the air in front of me. Therapy twice a month with a calm older guy named Richard who never spoke much, but somehow always asked the exact question I was avoiding. When did you start believing love had to be earned through suffering? That one stayed with me for weeks. Claire stopped calling every day sometime after Thanksgiving. The messages became less emotional too. Shorter, careful, legal conversations about the house, the joint account, mailing addresses. Funny how heartbreak eventually turns into paperwork in America. By January, I had lost almost 20 pounds. My shoulders felt lighter. My sleep came easier. Even my coworkers noticed the difference. You look younger, Derek from shipping told me one morning while we unloaded inventory trucks behind the warehouse. I laughed at that. Not younger, just less exhausted. There is a difference. The strangest part was realizing how much energy I had spent trying to survive emotionally inside my own marriage. When survival mode finally ends, your body does not celebrate immediately. First it rests, then it remembers itself. In February, nearly 4 months after I left, I ran into Claire unexpectedly downtown. Saturday afternoon, North Market. Snow melting along the sidewalks while people carried coffee cups through the cold. I had just finished buying vegetables when I heard my name behind me. Ethan. Her voice stopped me instantly because some sounds live permanently inside your nervous system. I turned slowly. Claire stood 10 feet away wearing a long camel-colored coat and black gloves, her blonde hair shorter now than I remembered. She looked beautiful in the careful polished way she always had, but tired too. The kind of tired makeup cannot fully hide. For a second, neither of us moved. People flowed around us carrying shopping bags and winter coats while our entire marriage stood quietly between two strangers in a crowded market. "Hey," I said gently. Claire gave a nervous little smile. "You look good." "Thanks." "You really do." I noticed then how tightly she held her coffee cup with both hands, like she needed something steady to anchor herself. "How have you been?" she asked. Such a dangerous question between people who once shared everything. I nodded faintly. "Good. Busy." She looked down briefly before meeting my eyes again. "Melissa told me you have been running marathons now." I smiled slightly. "Half marathons. I am not that impressive." Claire laughed softly at that. God, I remembered that laugh. For years I would have done anything to hear it directed at me warmly again. But standing there in the middle of the market, I realized something surprising. The sound no longer hurt. "I miss you," she said suddenly. No performance this time. No audience. Just honesty arriving too late to save anything. Snowmelt dripped quietly from the awnings overhead while people shuffled past us through the cold. I looked at her carefully then. Really looked. Claire was not evil. That would have been easier. She was human. Flawed. Selfish sometimes. Lonely too, probably. People do not destroy relationships overnight. They neglect them slowly while assuming tomorrow will always offer another chance to fix things. "I know," I answered softly. Tears gathered in her eyes almost immediately after that, because deep down she understood what I meant. Not rejection. Finality. There is a difference. She glanced away toward the crowded windows of the market. "I keep replaying that night in my head," she whispered. "I was awful. I could have agreed. Could have listed every humiliation and lonely dinner and invisible wound from 14 years together. But carrying resentment forever is just another way of staying emotionally trapped inside the same room. So instead I adjusted the grocery bag in my hand and said the only honest thing left. "The saddest part is not that you stopped loving me, Claire. It is that I stayed long after you did." She started crying quietly after that. Not dramatically. Just small, silent tears slipping through winter air while strangers passed without noticing. I stood there another moment beneath the gray February sky before finally stepping back. "Take care of yourself," I said gently. Then I walked away through the crowded market while snow melted slowly along the sidewalks behind me. And for the first time in years, leaving did not feel like loss. It felt like peace.